As I like to say, miles equal smiles, and a dirty car means a happy driver. Hey folks, so I just got back from a big trip, and I don't know if I look tired or haggard or beat, but I just did 1,900 miles in my Lotus Elise. I drove out to Salt Lake City from the San Francisco Bay Area for LOG40. That is the 40th annual Lotus Owners Gathering. So personally, what I love about road trips is that sense of self-sufficiency that you need to get there and get home safely. It pushes you out of your comfort zone a little bit, and you have to know and have the self-confidence that you can deal with whatever comes up along the way, whether you have car trouble, or you might have trouble with the locals, or anything else that just might be unexpected. That's part of the fun and part of the adventure, the unknown aspect of the road trip. Now, the Elise is not a car that's designed to do big road trips like this. There is limited storage space, and even with the hardtop on, the wind and road noise get annoying after a couple of hours. But I survived, and the car never missed a beat, including a track day at the Utah Motorsports campus, which is an awesome track. I'm gonna do a whole separate video about that, so be sure to subscribe so you can see when that comes out. But today I'm going to tell you what it was like to be behind the wheel of my Lotus for 1,900 miles and give you a little taste of what the LOG40 event was like. All right, so first let me give you some tips on packing because the Lotus doesn't have a lot of space. Now, I was going to be going to a track day, so I needed my helmet, I needed some tools, I needed some spares like brake pads and brake fluid and, a quart of oil, just the basic stuff that you would need in case something went wrong at the track. And some of it actually pretty handy if you're going to be on a road trip too, because you never know, you might have a breakdown on the side of the road. Now, normally I bring this toolbox to the track. It's not too big and it can fit most of the stuff that I need. I can get it all in there, but you can see how big it is, and it does take up quite a bit of space in the trunk. So one tip that I have for you is actually switch to a tool roll. And I picked this up on Amazon. I'll include a link in the video description, but you can see how much space that saved. And it still has the tools that I need. So I found this to be extremely helpful in terms of saving space for a road trip. So would highly recommend a tool roll instead of a toolbox. As you can see, if you don't have a passenger, this is a ton of extra space that you can use for the various luggage and gear and stuff that you need. See, you can fit a decent amount of stuff without a passenger. I managed to get a carry-on roller bag in the trunk, but soft luggage definitely works better to fit in all the little nooks and crannies. It's a bit of a game of Tetris, but I also managed to get some small items behind the driver's seat, and a fire extinguisher fits perfectly on the rear shelf behind the seats. Once packed, it was time to hit the road. I have to admit, I was a bit nervous about taking the Elise on such a long trip. I mean, unlike the 911, it is not a great freeway car. It's noisy, it's not super comfortable. It sometimes darts around on the road a little bit, either due to the wind or road imperfections. So I fitted the hardtop just before I left so that I could make the whole thing a little bit more civilized. I also spent a few days prior just getting everything all sorted out with the car and making sure it was tip-top for the trip. For the drive out, I left after dropping my kids off at school, and I headed up to Vacaville, where I met up with Raul, Mark, and John to caravan out. The first day, we made it to Elko, Nevada, which is about 500 miles or so from home. We really just made 3 gas stops, and one was combined with lunch at kind of like this random diner casino thing just past Tahoe and into Nevada. We hit this crazy dust storm past Reno where we could barely see the car in front of us, and it started raining during the dust storm too. It was really just such strange weather like I'd never seen, and it was blowing the cars and trash and debris and stuff all around. The rest of the drive, though, was pretty boring, to be honest. There isn't even really much to look at in terms of scenery. It's just mostly desert. I can see why the US military uses parts of Nevada for missile testing. We were on Highway 80 the whole way. It's long, straight, boring, not really the Elise's natural habitat. We found that cruising at about 90 miles per hour to be kind of ideal because it avoided the annoying transmission gear whine, and frankly, it was only 10 miles per hour over the limit out there. Podcasts and noise-canceling headphones made the whole thing a lot better. After our overnight in Elko, we continued our way with a stop at the Bonneville Salt Flats. They had some races going on out there, but the road ends actually about 2 miles from where they race, and you have to drive on the salt for those 2 miles to get the rest of the way. At the gate, the people working there saw our cars and immediately told us that taking nice cars on the salt is a bad idea. So we stuck to the pavement, except for a really quick photo that was just barely off the road. So sadly, we didn't get to see any racing or run our cars to their top speed. So, frankly, kind of a letdown, to be honest. We finally made it to the hotel in Salt Lake just around 2 p.m. We actually lost an hour due to the time change. We grabbed some lunch and checked in, and actually they had a car wash thing set up so we were able to wash our cars. I think this is the first time that I've ever driven to a different time zone. Every other time I've always flown to a different time zone, so it was kind of odd to just randomly lose an hour like that. Unfortunately, it ended up raining after we washed our cars that night, so we had to wipe them down again in the morning because there was going to be a car show and a photo thing with the whole group. We had a little cocktail reception in the evening, and it was super fun to just catch up with the extended group and meet some new Lotus folks. The next day, we did this car show and group photo in the rain. Yes, who would have thought? But by the time they were ready for the photo, it actually had stopped raining. It took us quite a while to line up all the cars and get everything sorted out. So the rain had stopped, and despite all the cars being wet, the sky looked amazing and the pavement was nice and black from the rain. This is perfect for photography. After lunch and checking out the cars, Mark and I did a little 3-hour drive through Cascade Springs and Emigration Canyon. Despite some more rain, the second half was totally dry and the road was in amazingly perfect condition. It was like the pavement was brand new. During one of our stops, we actually met a dog, and the owner told us that the dog's name was Lotus Elise, and the other dog that they had in the car was named Enzo Ferrari. Obviously, they asked for a photo with the cars, and naturally, we were happy to oblige. We got back from the drive and cleaned up, and then headed to the banquet for the night, which frankly was a little bit of a letdown. The food was mediocre, the guests from Lotus UK couldn't make it due to COVID restrictions, and there was no Amira or Avaya on display, which we thought was going to be the case. The highlight, though, was this hilarious video from Classic Team Lotus telling us about all the various antics that they had back in the early days of Formula One when Lotus was super competitive. Sunday, we went on another group drive. There are a lot of great driving roads in the Salt Lake area, but man, it was hot. By lunchtime, we were all so tired and so spent that we just took the afternoon to relax around the hotel and talk to other Lotus owners. There was such a good variety of cars, and I was really impressed with the number of Evoras that turned up. The following day, Monday, was the track day, and I'm going to do a separate video on that because the experience was so awesome, and I just want to talk about the track day separately, so be sure to subscribe so you can check out that when it comes out. Post-track day, we tried to get a head start on the trip home. And we were the last ones to leave the track, but we wanted to try to make it back to at least Elko, Nevada that night so that we had a reasonable drive home the next day. After we stopped for dinner in Wendover at this place called Fratelli Pizza, we actually ended up meeting the owner of the place, and he loved our cars, so we took a little photo and posted it to a review on Google Maps for his business. The following morning, I got breakfast at the hotel, and then I went out to my car to check the tire pressures and make sure that they were fine after the track day. I happened to run into two people who I had really interesting conversations with in the parking lot. They were both obviously checking out the pair of Elises that were parked there. The first guy was this former motorcycle racer, and we talked a bit about the Utah track, and he mentioned he'd been out to Sears Point and Laguna Seca a bunch of times when he was racing two-stroke motorcycles. The other guy was Tony, who worked at the hotel and mentioned he had been a pretty prominent automotive painter out in Oakland. He even said that he worked at this place called Mr. Corvette, which is really close to where I live, so really such a small world. The rest of the drive home was luckily pretty uneventful. Again, long, boring, and straight, not much to look at. One highlight of being out of the Bay Area, though, were these Sinclair gas stations. Their logo is a dinosaur, which I thought was awesome, and I regret not buying a Sinclair baseball cap while I was at one of them. And it kind of made me think, is the gasoline dinosaur juice? Dinosaur milk? Dinosaur blood? I think dinosaur juice, that's what I'm gonna go with. During the trip, we also learned that the car following gets much better gas mileage than the one in front punching a hole in the air. Just like in Formula One, the car in front is giving the car in back a tow. One other funny moment that we had was we stopped in a place called Winnemucca for coffee, which was, we searched Google Maps for Starbucks, and unlike at home where there's a Starbucks on every corner and sometimes even Starbucks across the street from each other or within blocks of each other, this time it said the closest Starbucks was 118 miles away. Luckily, we found a really good local place with great coffee. As I mentioned, I spent a lot of time listening to podcasts and am really enjoying the Us Lot podcast about interviews with Lotus employees. I'll include a link to that in the video description, but it has some really cool behind the scenes stuff. So about 1,900 miles after I left, I pulled into the comfort of my garage. Would I go to another log event? Absolutely. The joy of owning a car like this comes from the experiences and the memories that it provides, not the car itself. And trips like this are what it's all about. They make you feel more connected to your car in so many ways. So, as I like to say, miles equal smiles, and a dirty car means a happy driver. Thanks for watching.